The funeral of a hero, at least for the people of his home village in southern Lebanon. Wissam al-Tawil, nom de guerre Jawad, was the most senior Hezbollah commander killed by Israel so far in this conflict. To the Israelis, he was a terrorist. To his family and supporters, a martyr to the cause.
I am the mother of 2 martyrs, and the martyrdom of Jawad only serves to increase our strength, will and pride. The enemy should never think that one day we will be afraid of massacres or losing people.
He was hit in his car yesterday. Every time Israel strikes a Hezbollah target in Lebanon, they believe they're making Israel safer. But the Americans are concerned they may provoke a wider conflict. Hezbollah fires across the border every day, but their patron, Iran, has not, as yet, authorized an all-out war. It's a dangerous game. So far, the exchanges have all been in the border region. Israel wants Hezbollah to move its forces north of the Litani River. But even if the Lebanese government in Beirut agreed, it has no power of enforcement. The caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati told a senior UN official today that Lebanon was ready for talks on border stability. But Hezbollah listens to the Revolutionary Guard in Tehran, not to him. The border skirmishes were on the agenda of the US Secretary of State, visiting Tel Aviv for the 4th time since the conflict began. He saw the Defense Minister, the Foreign Minister, President Herzog, and of course Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, with whom he negotiated for a UN mission to visit Gaza to ensure that Palestinians can return to their homes in the north of the Strip, or at least what's left of them.
In today's meetings, I was also crystal clear. Palestinian civilians must be able to return home as soon as conditions allow. They must not be pressed to leave Gaza. As I told the Prime Minister, the United States unequivocally rejects any proposals advocating for the resettlement of Palestinians outside of Gaza. And the Prime Minister reaffirmed to me today that this is not the policy of Israel's government.
Gazans forced into overcrowded camps in southern Gaza say conditions are increasingly difficult.
My message to U.S. Secretary of State Blinken: get us back to northern Gaza, even if it's to a tent. It's better than here, because we are suffering.
Here, in the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, the Foreign Secretary was pushed to say whether he thought Israel had committed war crimes in Gaza.
I mean, if you're asking me, am I worried that Israel has taken action that might be in breach of international law because this particular premises has been bombed or whatever? Yes, of course I'm worried about that, and that's why I consult the Foreign Office lawyers when giving this advice on arms exports.
Fighting has intensified in Khan Yunis. 9 Israeli soldiers were killed yesterday. The Americans still aren't calling for a ceasefire. They do want Israel to stop killing Palestinian civilians and dial down tension on the northern border, but have yet to threaten any sanctions or the suspension of arms sales if Israel refuses to do so.
Lindsey Hilsum reporting. Well, joining me now is Avraham Levine. He's an intelligence analyst at the Alma Research Center in northern Israel. Thank you very much for coming on the program. I just wonder if you could explain to us what the Israeli government is up to in Lebanon. You've got the targeted assassinations of Hezbollah and Hamas senior commanders. You also had that, killing of the Iranian commander in Syria. What's the idea here? What's the strategy?
I think what we're looking at is, as opposed to what we hear on the media about a Gaza-Israel war or Hamas-Israel war, I think Israel is facing 2 fronts since October 7th. And Nasrallah, Hassan Nasrallah, head of Hezbollah, said it himself, that he's supporting the Palestinians and is shooting all over into Israel's northern border. As a resident of the north, when I'm not in the IDF and the reserves and I'm home, I'm still being shot at. What we're doing is returning fire to the sources of the fire. The commanders that are being hit are the ones that are planning the shootings into Israel, into civilian residential areas in our northern front.
But how far do you think Israel will take this? Because, you want Hezbollah to withdraw north of the Litani River. So far, they've given no indication they're going to do that. The government in Beirut has absolutely no jurisdiction over Hezbollah. So do you think the Israeli government is planning to occupy southern Lebanon, as you've done in the past?
Well, just to give a little basic information here, the idea of pushing Hezbollah to the north is not new in the region. And Resolution 1701 claims that, right, that's a UN resolution. That's not Israel calling for Hezbollah. And there's a UNIFIL, the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, one of the most robust, large peacekeeping forces in the world, is in charge of supporting the Lebanese army in doing so. That's their job, not Israel's job.
Right.
I didn't understand the remark about the jurisdiction. As I understand, Lebanese government has full jurisdiction in Lebanon.
Yeah, but not over Hezbollah. They seem to be calling the shots in the turf that they control. I just wonder if I could ask you, is there a broader idea here that the real enemy for Israel is Iran, and what you're really hoping to do is to get Iran involved in a wider conflict with the Americans dragged in on your side?
No, of course not. No one in Israel wants a war, not against Lebanon, certainly not against Iran. We're trying to avoid war. We've been trying to do that for a very long time. I'm sadly, October 7th, we were forced to go to war. That wasn't planned on our side, obviously. Right. I don't think anyone in the world thinks that's the case.
But there are many
I think Israel is trying to maintain the situation and make it safe for our civilians to go back home. Because right now, over 200,000 Israelis are displaced in their own country. And as long as that's the situation, Israel has the basic duty to take care of their residents and their security.
Just very briefly, do you agree with those, including in the administration in America, who are very afraid that this conflict will escalate in the region?
I'm very concerned, yes. I'm completely, I completely agree with that concern. It's extremely important to understand that the situation is very sensitive, and this can lead to a terrible war also on the northern front. I think the main concern and the reason United States officials are coming to Israel is that concern, maintaining a situation that Iran doesn't go to war. I think the rest of the concerns are a little smaller.
Abraham Levine, thank you very much indeed. But joining me now from Washington is the Middle East analyst and former State Department advisor, Aaron David Miller. Aaron David Miller, great to have you back on the program. I don't know if you just heard Abraham Levine. He said there is a real concern of an escalation of this conflict in the region, but he's saying that Israel wouldn't be to blame. Do you agree with him?
Look, you have three parties, four if you count the United States, that will determine and decide whether or not what we've been watching for almost 4 months now, as we enter the fourth month of the Israel-Hamas war, to whether or not there'll be a regional war and a dramatic escalation. 1, Hezbollah, 2, Iran, 3, Israel, and 4, the United States. I think for now, my judgment is that the risk aversion that has characterized both Hezbollah and Hamas and Iran's policies, and I would include Israel in that category, still prevails. Tehran and Nasrallah are prepared to fight Israel to the last Palestinian. And I think Hamas, frankly, is doing their work for them. The more entrenched Israel becomes in Gaza, the more entrenched Israel becomes in the West Bank, greater the anger of Palestinians, armed struggle, the international community heaps opprobrium on the Israelis. There's tensions with the United States. I think as far as the Iranians are concerned, things are going relatively well. I do believe that if you ask me where we'd be a month from now, we still will not have tripped into what I would describe to you as a major regional confrontation, because no one, including the Israelis, wants to open this box. And when we talk about a regional escalation, let's be clear about what we mean. We mean a major war between Israel and Hezbollah, in which Hezbollah uses thousands of its estimated 150 to 200,000 high trajectory weapons of varying ranges and lethality, some that are precision-guided munitions. Israel will respond, destroying Lebanese infrastructure and much of the southern suburbs of Hezbollah, their command and control. That's going to trigger pro-Iranian militia strikes escalating against U.S. forces in Syria and Iraq. The Americans having deployed a carrier strike group and maybe another with 200 strike aircraft will get involved. And I wouldn't rule out the possibility of direct Israeli and American strikes against Iranian assets and territory.
Okay.
That's what we're talking about.
All right. Now and the way you outline that, it sounds very, very scary indeed. So
nobody wants that.
Right, including the Israelis, is what you're saying.
Particularly given the fact that they have not been able to accomplish their military objectives. Hamas is still a vibrant force. Yeah. They have not succeeded in killing the senior leadership or freeing the hostages. No. Okay. I think a two-front war would be a disaster for everybody, including Israel.
Now, another one is this. Blinken has been there 4 times. He keeps urging restraint. The Israelis keep not listening when it comes to restraint. Do you think it's time for him to move to the next level of threat, maybe sanctions of some sort?
Look, the U.S. has a hope and an expectation, I think, that the character of the Israeli ground campaign, it's already changed in northern Gaza. And I suspect it's going to change from division-side operations, heavy on artillery and airstrikes, which cause an exponential rise in Palestinian deaths and a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, is going to shift by the end of January to a much more directed, brigade-size, intelligence-driven operation against tunnels and the Hamas leadership, assuming they can find them. That's where I think the Israelis are going. Should the Israelis not go there? The administration, I would argue, has 3 options. Number 1, slow walk or restrict military assistance to Israel. Number 2, change the posture of the U.S. and the UN Security Council to abstain or vote for a resolution. And 3, I would describe as the nuclear option, to agree with the international community, who basically wants a cessation of hostilities with no Hamas reciprocity. So those are the options. My own prediction would be Joe Biden is not going to go to any of them.
All right. And a one-word answer, please. Do you think in 2 months' time we will be in a regional war in the Middle East, yes or no?
The answer is no.